Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I have something I want to show you here, and this is a tonette. You've seen it before, I've brought it in, and it's somewhat similar to a song flute, although I don't have my song flute out here. This is a tonette. And a lot of children play it. It's used like a preschool instrument or a pre-recorded instrument. It's not as good as a recorder in its way that it plays, but it has some similarities. And you know, a lot of these little instruments, they're a lot of fun to play, and they can act as a springboard to other instruments that are more complicated. I'm trying to turn this so you can see the tone holds, but I'm not sure that it's going to show up. But at any rate, left hand on top, like I have it. My thumb hole in the back, it does have a thumb hole like a recorder, and it's covered. And then these on the right hand, and this is the way that you hold it. Now I'm going to play a little bit. It's not going to sound as good as a recorder, but a lot of schools use these instruments. And it's kind of a nice little instrument. I mean, I can do some work on it. It does have a place for you to put your thumb of your right hand right here. There's a little hole here, circle. It's not a hole, but a circle. I'm not sure that's going to show up. And there's one on this side, on the top of it. I'm trying to get it to see if it would kind of reflect off some light so you could see it better. And you can see I don't think it's going to do that, but you can see where the holes are raised a little. If I hold it this way, you can see that it's raised. And some of these instruments come with an explanation as to how to play them. A tuning chart, a fingering chart, or positions, how you hold it. And I wanted to show you that for the tonette because it's interesting. For children, the instrument has been named Tommy Tonette. Tommy Tonette. So this is Tommy Tonette. And he has got this instrument right here, and he's holding it, and there's a little bell here, and this is the way it's shaped. Now, let me tell you about the bell. Anytime you have an instrument that flares out at the end of it, that's called a bell. Brass instruments have them, wood ones have them. Let's see, an example would be the flutophone. The flutophone has a bell. Saxophones have a big bell. Clarinets have a little bell. The recorders, I guess you could call it a bell. It's not very big, but it does kind of count, I guess. This little ridge down here would be, it's called the foot joint, but it is a part of a bell, if you wanted to consider it that. So at any rate, this is Tommy Tonette. Now, what's interesting about Tommy Tonette is the fact that you could open it up, and it shows you how to hold it. And it has it in steps. And I wanted to bring it to your attention because it is so right on. Even though it's a simple instrument, it's the way you hold many of the instruments. The saxophones, the clarinets, the oboes, the bassoons, the flutes are held in the same kind of way. So you have your left hand on the top. Now notice the fingers are sticking out here, but that's just to show you the position. The right hand on the bottom. There's a tone hole right here that's covered. There's a little circle, you don't see it in this diagram, to put your right hand. And what this does here is if you were playing it, it shows it like this would be where your mouth is, and this is the bell. It's like showing it to you as if you're playing it like this, which of course you are, and so the mouthpiece is kind of down and towards you, and then your A is right here, your G is right here, your F and E and D and C. All of these things are right here. Now what it's showing you in this diagram is like close to your mouth. and you're standing there and you're holding the instrument like this. And so it's showing an A with the first two notes covered, and an A is with the first two notes covered. Now, the octave C is a little bit different than it is on some woodwind instruments. It's like everything is uncovered, except the tone hole is covered. But other than that, the other fingers go off. And so what I like about this is the way that it does show you your hand positions. The other thing it does, and I was kind of amazed, the first thing it gives you instruction on is how to tongue. Now, I've got 2 or 3 of these here. This is another picture. They sent me 2 or 3 of them. And on that one, you can see, if you get a kind of a close-up of it, is left hand on top, 1, 2, 3, just your first 3 fingers. And this finger, which is your little finger, is kind of folded back. And then you have 4 on your right hand, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so as I'm holding the instrument, now I would never put my 4th finger like that. It's just, it doesn't seem good. It throws your hand out of position. It's just hanging there loose. And for that reason, even though they don't show it in the picture, there's a little circle here. It's not a hold, it's a little circle, and you put your finger in that circle. It's not a tone hole. It's just a place for you to rest it. It looks like it would be another key, but it's not. And then on the right hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, and those are all keys that you actually will play. So what do I do with this hand? There's a little circle, and this finger, there's a little circle, and I just put it down to rest it. Like that. I actually like this instrument. It doesn't do as much as a recorder can do, but that's the way it is. So you have Tommy Tonette, and then if you open it up, it gives you some songs, but it also gives you a fingering chart. And the fingering chart is, this is the top, this is the bottom, and you see there's a line that cuts through. The top part, it's going to be hard for you to see maybe, but this would be your left hand. The bottom, that would be your right hand. And so although it's harder to, that line here, it's harder to see, but that line separates the upper hand from the lower hand, the left hand from the right hand. And then you have these songs that you can play. And it does give some instruction. The instruction it gives, believe it or not, is how do you tongue it. And it says, what the instruction for tonguing is, put your tongue on the mouthpiece and say to, T-O-O. Well, ta or to, whichever, it would be the same thing. Now, the recorder is more sophisticated, but it's basically the same kind of thing. You know, you blow into it, the air comes out of the labium, which is going to be this. There's no block that you can see, but everything is in the inside. You can see it on other instruments, so everything is in the inside. Now, I can get another half a tone if I lift the tone hole off, and so that it's not covered at all. And that tone is pretty clear. So you can get a lot from these little instruments. I wanted to show you this because of the fact that the instructions are there, the pictures are good, it shows you really how you play it, and the fingering chart is good, and it's just a small instrument. Now, if you take a recorder, you can actually see a lot from the way it's built if you get a translucent one. Now, here's a translucent one. You can see through it. You can see my hand through it. But you can also see the block. there's a white piece that sticks down here, and you can see it. It almost looks like it's a reed. And when I first opened it up, I said, "What is this extra piece of plastic doing here?" But it's part of the block. And then when you do it in this direction, this is part of the block right here. The block becomes a part of the mouthpiece. You can see it, you can see the shape of it, or at least I can from here, by looking at the mouthpiece. And you can see it's down here, and it cuts across and goes up. It's the same shape as the mouthpiece, and it's white. So it shows up. Now, other instruments can show the same thing. These are Skags that show it so well. And here's one that's blue. And it looks, you can see that brighter piece of blue is actually a white piece of plastic, and it shows through. And you can see it becomes part of the block, which is shown here. And then you can see how it cuts down. Now, it may be harder for you to see, but if I hold it like this, you can see it. Cuts across, goes up, and kind of loops around, and there it is. That's the block. Why do you have a block? Well, you can't have air going in both directions, and it's a case of directing the air so that you can get tones out of it. There's a little bulge right here. I mean, it's not going to be obvious to you, but there's a little bulge right there. It's not completely flat. You blow in here. The air goes down here or by that bulge and comes out of the labia, but not all of it. Some of it's got to go down the rest of the tube. So the longer the tube, the lower the tone. So it's got the tone hole right here, and here you have your fingers left on top, right on the bottom, and they're not flat, even though you'd think so by Tony Toadette, but they curve a little, and then and you don't have a little hole to rest your little fingers on, even though the Tonette does. Maybe that's helping to teach children the right hand position, so they're kind of left free. And I would never fold them back, but just kind of hold them open. Now on this, of course, you're going to use the little finger, but on the left hand, all you use is the 3 fingers. So even though this is an inexpensive instrument, I didn't pay a whole lot, maybe $5 or $6 for it, it plays really well. Now and the other green one I showed you is also a Skag. Now one thing, I brought in another translucent, and this is an orange one. The block is there, but you can't see it very well because it's exactly the same color as the rest of the instrument. You could get a little glint of it if you look at it and you're close to it and you hold it sideways, but I wanted to show you the joints. So this I'm going to separate into the 3 joints. Here's the body, and as you can see, it's clear. There's nothing there. And the left foot joint, there's nothing there. And so, well, there are a couple of little holes, that's important, but you just gently twist it on, and you align it up so that these 2 holes, which I've got my finger on, just come below this. And that's how you get your lower note. And then, of course, the head joint, you do it the same way. You gently twist it on and get it aligned up so that your labium is going to be in line with the holes that's on the fingerboard. This, by the way, is a fingerboard. When you have a piano or some kind of a keyboard instrument, there are the actual keys that you press down and all of that, like I showed you the last segment. This is not a keyboard, but it's called a fingerboard. You do it with your fingers, and keys don't go down. You just cover the holes. Now, this is not a very good one. And but the reason I only paid $1 for it. You can't get the higher octaves at all. get some squeaking sound. But I bought it, and in a way, just to show you what the translucents are and the fact that you can pull it apart so easily to see the joints. Now on this one, this is a Japanese instrument. It's very good. And what I like about it, it is so easy to see the parts to it. The recorder comes in 3 parts. This would be the head joint, from here down to and including this piece of plastic around here. Then the body's going to be part of this plastic down to here. And then the bottom part with this plastic and this part is the foot joint. If you get a new instrument, many times it'll come in a case and you pull them apart. Then you have to know how to put it together, which is why I show people in the show how to do it. You don't see an obvious block here, everything's in the inside. You do have the tone hole in the back, which is also called the thumb hole, because that's where your thumb goes. And one thing I like about it is that it's very, very visible. And it plays very well. It's a Japanese student model. I remember a few months ago that I kind of got concerned because so many music stores are closing. And they shouldn't be closing, but they are. Maybe they just don't get enough foot traffic. Some of my favorite places no longer exist. And I was concerned about repair of instruments. A lot of times if you go to a music store, they have somebody there that repairs instruments. And instruments do have to be repaired occasionally. And then I thought, well, if I want to get, if I have an instrument that's in trouble or it's old and it doesn't work as well, then I need to have a good supply of instruments to act as replacements for as long as I happen to teach music. So I got a group of instruments, and some of them are from different countries that play very well. If one of them fails me, and rarely do they do that, especially a simple instrument like a recorder, but sometimes they will. Sometimes they just kind of stop playing. I don't know if they get clogged up. There's not really all that much to them, that I have to have replacements. Also, I like to compare instruments. I like to compare the tone of instruments and so forth. And what if the music stores close and there's no place to take an instrument for repair? So what do? Send them back to the manufacturer? I doubt it. I mean, there are millions and millions of instruments, and if you have to do that, then they're going to be overloaded with repairs. It's best for the music stores to stay open and hire people for the purpose of repair. Now, I have a saxophone. It's older than I am, and I'm in my 80s. It's quite a bit older. And I had to have that saxophone completely redone. They stripped it all. They stripped all the keys off from it. It was just bare bones piece of metal, and they completely rebuilt it. But they had specialists doing it. They knew exactly what they were doing. The rods, the pads, the keys, the springs, all of those things that are in regular instruments, sometimes they have to be repaired. And it was difficult for me if I had a lot of instruments that needed to repair. It's not because they've been maltreated, it's just that I've used them a lot. So I decided to get instruments that are simple to play beautiful music, and don't require a lot of repair. But even some of these do require a repair occasionally. Now, the wooden instruments can be revoiced. They go right through the whole instruments. I don't know whether they kind of sand down the wood. If they're wooden instruments, plastics are going to be the same anyway. You don't revoice them. But wooden instruments sometimes lose their voice as they get older, believe it or not, just like we do when we get older. But they can be revoiced. There's a process for that, handling the wood and whatever they do to sand it down so that they bring the voices back as to be good like it used to be. And so if you get a wooden instruments are more expensive than regular instruments, but if you treat them well and handle the wood and take care of them, I know one of my wooden clarinets has to be oiled every so often. There's a special oil that I use, and I run it through so the wood gets the oil, and it's fine. This one doesn't because there's a glaze on it. It wouldn't absorb any oil anyway, but clarinets sometimes will absorb oil, and they have to have oil every so often. You just don't throw any oil in it. You have a special oil for it, and you take all of the pads that would close, and you put a piece of plastic there so you don't want to get the oil on the keys. Some keys remain open unless you press them shut. And so when that's the case, then you don't have to worry about it. You just gently take a piece of cloth or something, or a brush or something, and just put the oil in. And I did a little oiling on the outside, let it dry, let it absorb, and then it's back to snuff. It won't get any cracks in it. So I just wanted to show you some things about instruments, and I'm not quite finished with the little flutophone. It has a scale that plays exactly like the saxophone does. And the way you can transfer instruments, you can transfer what you know from one instrument to the other. This is in the key of C. So anytime you have an instrument in the key of C, like the recorder, then it's going to play the same kind of way. With the flutophone, you have a place to put your right hand. It's right on this hook, like that. So there's a place to put it. Then, of course, your thumb hole is where you keep your thumb. And you could play it the same way. You know, left hand on top, just these 3 fingers, and on the bottom, just the 4 fingers, and the thumb has a place where it's at rest. Otherwise, it's just going to just lay there wherever it is. And of course, there's a block here, or it's made like that in the mouthpiece. This is white with a red mouthpiece, but you can get black with a white mouthpiece. But there's so much you can transfer that you can go from one instrument to the other. This is a little sweet tone. You know, it's a conical. It comes kind of to a point, but it plays the same way as the penny whistles, but there's no tone hole in the back of it. So you just rest your thumb anywhere. And it does very well in playing. Made in England, it plays a lot of Irish music. You also get the cylindrical instruments. This is a penny whistle, plays the same way. And you can create music on, and I'm seeing more and more of these instruments in regular orchestras. And as I'm holding it, I'm looking at the monitor because I want to see what you're seeing. You can see some of the tone holes because they're kind of bouncing off in the light. And you can see there are probably 7 holes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 6 holes, but the recorders have 7 holes because you don't use your little right finger on the penny whistle like you do on those other instruments. So there's only 6 holes, but you hold it the same way, and the basic fingering pattern is the same. And there's also no tone hole in the back of the penny whistle, or the Irish flutes for that matter. But there's a lot of similarity between them. So once you learn how to play one, in a sense you learn how to play the others as well. So I'm going to close it. We're running out of time, but I have a lot more to show you, and we're really back to basics. So I'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.